Hello there, everybody. This is Alan Felton from the Laguna Woods Democratic Club, and welcome to another monthly segment of the program Black in Laguna Woods. Thank you so much for taking your time to join us today. And normally we speak with people from Laguna Woods or people in the Laguna Woods direct area about things. We're going a little further afield today. We are going to be speaking with Gabe Smith. Gabe is a founder of and the current chairman of a newer organization in Orange County called the Orange County Black Democrats. So Gabe, first of all, thank you, welcome, and thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you taking your time to join us today.
Yeah, and thank you, Alan, for your hospitality and giving us an opportunity to speak and talk more about our organization.
Absolutely. Before we actually do talk about your organization, put you in the spotlight here first.
Sure.
You just want to give people a little idea of who you are. Just introduce yourself, who you are.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Gabe Smith, not a lifelong resident of Orange County. I actually grew up in a small college town called Claremont, California. For those who are familiar, it's the home of the Claremont colleges. My parents and grandparents were faith pastors and professors at Pitzer College. So that was my hometown growing up. My background in education is in political science and economics from the wonderful Cal Poly Pomona University with graduate degrees from Sacramento State University. I spent my whole life as a community organizer, being involved in what we would coin political engagement, starting as a student leader during my times in college and moving on to working in the House Representatives as a legislative aide and as a policy analysis in Sacramento. And when my time in Sacramento concluded, I decided to return home with my wife in Santa Ana, where she took a job being a office manager for Supervisor Doug Chafee here in Orange County. So that brought our family to the OC. Well, my wife back to the OC and me to Orange County. After spending my entire life organizing around social justice issues, community impact programs, I realized in Orange County as a region, there really wasn't a vehicle or organization to be the home base of operations for social justice activities focused on the Black community. Orange County has a unique community. The Black community is a little bit different than other places. It's a very business owner community or educator community, or people working in finance are generally the type of individuals here in Orange County. So I wanted to find an organization that could be politically engaged in advocacy and just representation in both the business and public sector. And that's kind of what gave birth to the OC Black Democrats.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've had a basically lifelong interest in politics. This isn't something you were driven to, by some incident or something. This is just, it sounds like politics. And
I think I was driven to it just by, I had a family that was really politically engaged. Like my aunt worked, in DC as a civil rights attorney. My grandparents taught social justice and English at a university. So it's kind of interwoven to me, always talking about the history and what happens when you don't stand up for your rights and you remain silent was interwoven into my identity, who I am. So in all cases, if no one's speaking out, I'm going to be the person to do it.
Yeah, okay. Well, you kind of went into this a little bit when you talked about yourself, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Why do you feel there is a need here in Orange County for an Orange County Black Democratic organization?
I think on one hand, it's always healthy to have a safe space for any group of people to be able to organize and engage the community, and also a place to welcome people in to garner education that can help us have a more inclusive society. I think the second most critical thing here is there is a culture here in Orange County to not talk about race as if it's a non-issue. And, the Black community here, it is an issue. but it's an issue that for historically we've kind of brushed under the rug because we're here for economic opportunities. It's a great place to work. It's a great community to live. And speaking out about social justice issues has generally led to some form of social penalty for the Black residents here in Orange County. And then thirdly, it's really within the Democratic Party structure, because this is a Democratic club, is creating a pathway to, get more representation in the political space, whether that's serving on local county commissions or within cities or supporting candidates to run for office. It's interesting to note that beyond the city council level, that's the highest level of government Black person has achieved to represent the residents of Orange County.
So no Black person has ever been elected to like Board of Supervisors or any of the other countywide offices?
No.
So is that something you think will be? I know it could be changing. Do you see that? Your own prognostication. Do you see that as happening in the near future?
So I can't say that's going to happen in the near future. I mean, we've had a lot of successes at city council levels with the election of Richard Hurd and Elisa Viejo, Letitia Clark in Tustin. So there have been gains. So we just want to expand that. So a big part for us is fundraising and kind of building a financial support institution to train, recruit, quality candidates. We want candidates that aren't running for office solely for being, Black. They're running because they have a background in public policy. They understand how governance works. And, those kind of people, when they work in public service, generally aren't the wealthiest people. So you want to have some kind of financial support to get them going. And I think that's the short term for us. And in the long term, ultimately, it would be a candidate for a supervisory seat, state senate, state assembly, Congress. But it's a maturation process to get there, to say the least.
Yes. Yeah. So again, you kind of answered some of this already, but again, I'll ask this one. What do you hope that the Black Dem of Orange County will accomplish? What's the purpose of the club?
I think on one side of the coin, it's unity, bringing together our community and joining with the other groups doing great work in the community, like the NAACP, like the National Action Network, where I serve as political director, to bring these groups together to advocate for sustainable change. We've had a challenge here in a lot of these groups operating in a non-political mode, meaning if it involves politicians, we're not going to engage. We're just going to talk about maybe more teachers, Black teachers across the county and issues like that. But I realize I strongly believe, and so do the members of the Black Democrats of Orange County, that it's incumbent on us to engage in the political space. So I hope this grows as that first vehicle that may spur political action, may inspire individuals to run for office, and inspire more consultants to develop in focusing and assisting Black candidates. So a myriad of things.
Yeah. So are there any other organizations, any politically oriented organizations you're aware of in Orange County that deal specifically with Black people, or is this pretty much it?
I think we're the only group specifically in the political space, also in a partisan space, on behalf of Black people in this county.
Yeah. How about things like outside the strictly political sphere? Are there things that you hope or are doing now, the club's doing now, beyond the political sphere, in the social sphere? I know you talk about social justice. People equate that with politics. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But you're just outside the strictly political sphere. Your Democratic club, so your job, good or bad, is to elect Democrats. But beyond
it is. But beyond that sphere, we were focusing the redistricting efforts, making sure that for all groups, districts were drawn equitably across the county. I think in some areas we've had some successes and others less so. But I mean, just having the Black community a part of that process for the first time historically here, I think was a great action. Additionally, it's supportive services. We're developing mentorship programs to, help children that are dealing with racial issues in schools through, sports programs, just being available to talk on the phone, giving them a space where they can vent and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. How do I navigate this without having to go to the on-site school counselor and perhaps being labeled? I think that's a little of the community engagement part of what we're doing. And we have hopes to expand that and scale it as we have more resources, of course.
What kind of, how young children are you talking about? How long are you talking about kids in elementary school?
So we're starting as early as 6th grade. You know, a lot of data shows that that's about the age when people really identify racial differences with their classmates. That's generally when they come into, you know, a rationality of, hey, maybe I'm being treated different because of my identity, not because of what I'm doing. And we've noticed a lot of data shown that that's the age. So we start at that group and try to get them young. And we've only been doing this for 2 years now. So, I mean, we haven't seen what the long-term maturation of this process is, but we hope it'll be very helpful. And we have a cohort at this point, about 80 students in Orange County.
Is there trouble, call it recruiting? I don't know what the proper term would be, recruiting people to participate in this. Are people reluctant to it? I remember when, you know, lived back 3,000 years when I was a kid, I was always reluctant to admit any kind of weakness or vulnerability amongst myself. And I wonder if you run into that kind of situation.
There is reluctancy, Alan, and I think you hit the head on the nail there. And it's about building trust, right? A lot of these experiences amongst our group are shared experiences. So I'll talk about my experience. It may not be uniquely the same as theirs, but when we all come together as a cohort, each of us has experiences that are similar to the children. And that gives them the comfortability to open up, because it's not about weakness, it's about education and understanding.
Right. And when when the club is being brought into organization, did you get any kind of what's the term they use, blowback against forming an organization, specifically, you know, a Black-oriented organization or an organization for Black people?
Well, Alan, you truly asked a tough question. You put me on the spot there. Good work as a journalist. Okay, so of course there's pushback in forming this group, because people felt like statistically the number of Black people in Orange County is quite low. We're not a substantial demographic group. So they're like, why is there a need when you could join with, let's say, the Anaheim Democratic Club or the Newport Beach Democratic, just join a city club? And, you know, my articulation of that was, when you have us just thrust into an established organization like that, typically issues of relevance to assist our community do not percolate to the top, right? It's going to be very unlikely that a Democratic club that's focused on electing the best Democrat available to beat a Republican is going to be the Black candidate, given that demographics factor into politics, given that fundraising factors into politics. So you want to win now. And generally, a Black candidate isn't what would be the most favorable option to start with at this time for larger Democratic seats.
Right. I'd like to look at that from a kind of a different angle. People who identify as Black, I guess that's the demographic term, in Orange County is about 2%.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the same thing here in Laguna Woods. It kind of mirrors the demographic breakdown as far as that's concerned. How does a minority that is that small make? I mean, every community has their own needs, their own interests that are different from other needs and interests of other communities. But how does a community that small make its voice heard and get its issues addressed? I would imagine, you know, kind of like running for office you were talking about, that would be a very difficult thing. People just don't have the interest.
Yeah, so, and that's where coalitions matter, because what are quote unquote Black issues are generally issues that are relevant to most communities. It's just we're usually not at the seat of the table when having that conversation in Orange County. So for instance, food insecurity is a big thing. Homelessness is a big thing. These are county-wide issues that we can join to. Voter rights, everyone wants to have accessibility to vote. Access to quality education and equitable treatment within education institutions is an issue that everyone cares about. So I think that's how we elevate voice, by being competent in the policy and also elevating our own voices at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, not necessarily personally, although it could be personally too for you, but in Orange County, and I know you're not a native of it, but you said your wife was. Do you feel that discrimination is a big issue? I mean, listen, we know it goes on every place. You can't say it's not an issue. But do you think it's a large issue here in Orange County? Something under the rug, under the table, or just what do you
So
think?
I do believe that discrimination is an issue here in Orange County, but I'm not one to just coin everything under the umbrella of discrimination. I'm also not one to, label an action as racist just because it might be an action that disenfranchises the Black community. I see it more as ignorance in the veil of lack of exposure to Black people in Orange County. Many people in Orange County have grown up without having a Black peer or working with a Black organization. And a symptom of that is you're comfortable working within your own groups. So this will affect voting behaviors. This will affect hiring practices. This affects, behaviors, I think, internally with the Orange County Democratic Party itself, because it's just something that isn't common practice. So I will say, yes, it exists, but I think it's layered with just lack of exposure. And for this to be the first Black Democratic club within the DPOC, that kind of even illuminates that this problem is a matter of comfortability and exposure. I feel like this is something that can be overcome as people understand that, hey, there are Black individuals competent enough to run for office, to be involved in business and whatnot.
Right. I want to ask you, if I could, about the specific. We'll get back to the more general in a minute, but the incident that happened in Laguna Hills High School a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure many people are aware, but in case they're not, it was a basketball game. One of the players on the other team, I think, forgetting which team it was, but it was Black, and people were yelling racial slurs and at him while he was shooting fouls while he was playing, and kind of like nobody did anything about it while they were there. And eventually, the school got a kind of meek apology. Oh, sorry about that. I just wonder, when I read about that, I mean, the feeling on that. I mean, that's got to, whenever that happens to somebody, there's got to be you have to have a gut feeling about it. That's got to hit you someplace inside. How is it difficult to deal with that kind of thing? Is that kind of thing, well, people are people, or is it more than that to you?
The best way to say it is insulting, right? Because why not just talk about the performance on the field? Why make it, a racialized comment? And, that's within the, communication of the beholder, right? That gentleman or woman, don't know who it was, but decided to make that comment. That's their prerogative. I would hope that sentimentality isn't carried by the majority that were attending the game, but that does illuminate that we do have a problem. There is a part of our community believes that is okay, right? And I think that's a systemic problem, right? And I don't know how to, re-educate someone not to do that. We can try, but some people will vocalize how they see fit and what they believe in. And that's something I think is prevalent amongst many communities. And I mean, like, a lot of people look at this as a Black thing, but historically there have been, racist slurs amongst white groups, especially immigrant groups. My wife is half the family is Italian American, and I could see how Italians would treat the Irish different than a Cuban immigrant that was here. So this is something that's interwoven into the fabric of how we try to disassociate ourselves from a group and create a element of superiority. And I think that's a bigger thing than just Orange County, but something that we do need to address.
Yeah, I agree. It's a human problem. It's not every race. So I want to ask about you now too. What What's your ambitions and goals? Do you plan on making politics a lifelong career? Things like running for elective office, are they on the horizon? Just,
Yeah, I can.
where are you headed? What were you thinking?
That's a tough question, being 30 years old.
Right.
I haven't thought about my long-term career, but I do know I want to focus on, my family is really important to me. So, developing my career in a sense of where I'm a great provider for my wife and my daughter is something that's, quintessential to me at this time.
Right.
And supporting great people who are running for office is my focus, and getting people, in office who are supportive of this idea. Someone I'm really high on is Pete Hardin. You had a great meeting. Seems like he has a keen understanding of social justice and is willing to, walk on thin ice as in Orange County as a district attorney and talk about these issues and find ways to change the culture within the district attorney's office, our judicial structure in Orange County. I know having an opportunity to challenge him on, hey, if you look at the data, there's not a lot of Black people serving in any work capacity within the district attorney's office or the judicial sector across the county. That would be a great place to make an improvement because it's something that's actually doable. And generally, when you have more people that have an understanding of the community, positive outcomes come from that. So that's my focus in the short term. And have I considered running for office? Of course I have, because I work in the political space and you see other people do it. But I'm the kind of guy who I try to define myself as the lotus. The river happens around me, but I try to keep steady and kind of see where we need to go. And that's my answer to the running for office question at this time.
Okay, that's a good answer. It reminded me when right after I asked that question, you started to answer it. Right when I was in the 8th grade, my guidance counselor asked me what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I don't know, sell pencils at Yankee Stadium. I don't know. That's just having such a small Black population. How difficult is it to attract people here to Orange County? Does Orange County, amongst Black people, still have a reputation? And had a terrible reputation amongst a lot of people who didn't feel this, strictly conservative Republican in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It's changing now, but it has changed for Black people.
Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, there are people across California, Orange County is Alabama of the West. So, that's a funny term to me. Never lived in Alabama, but I kind of can read into what they're saying.
Right.
So there is a deterrent. They look at articles in the past where, the racial incidents in Yorba Linda to families that were living in Yorba Linda in the past, that was in, the OCR. They see the top level representation in the government, not very favorable for the Black community in the sense of representation. They look at the percentage numbers, it's not bad. Now, so that's a major deterrent. So recruiting people to move into the county, I haven't attempted that. I don't know if that'll be the most successful, but our focus with OC Black Democrats are those who are here. We're 70,000 strong. I mean, that's a significant group of people. If third or quarter of that was to organize in a very focused way, that's an impactful group. We've seen throughout politics that a vocal minority group can impact policy outcomes. So that's where my focus, my career is in public policy and public affairs. So I'm always looking at what change can we make structurally within the government? What changes can we make to to policies? Buena Park acknowledged Black History Month this week for the first time ever in history. So those are small things that lead to greater things. And that's our focus right now as a group.
Okay, and this is we're running out of time. So this could be the last question. I'm curious, do you have any people who you look up to, political heroes, for lack of a better term, either living or in the past? Is there anybody that you look up to?
Yeah. So for me, it was Congressman John Lewis, who was a personal mentor to me. So that was the person who picked me up when I first landed on Capitol Hill, walking around as an intern, had no idea what I was doing, kind of even gave me a tour of how to find where to submit bills, where the attorneys are, how to get through the building and find things. And throughout my career, he remained a mentor to me until passing away. That's one. That's my biggest mentor in my political life. There are a lot of people I look up to. I look up to, most of the Black legislators in Sacramento, seeing how they move policy work and work in a diverse space. Because, my dream here is that I don't have to talk about the Black Democrats in Orange County. We're talking about here's the Black community working in conjunction with the rest of the county to do great things. And I don't want to talk about having an opportunity for a Black candidate to run for office. I want to talk about Sam, who's this really great candidate who is on the right side of the issues, and every community is out him supporting him for the Board of Supervisors. That's the conversation I want to have.
Yeah, that's the conversation we need to
Yeah.
have without a doubt. So Gabe, we are at time. I want to really thank you so much for being here today and sharing your information, sharing yourself with us. We definitely appreciate. So Gabe Demas-Smith, chairman.
I am.
All right, chairman of the Orange County Black Democrats, and somebody working to make a difference here in Orange County. We can't thank you enough, and we can't thank you enough for the work that you do. And we hope you keep it up. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me.